Warning. This program contains strong language, auditory violence, and mental nudity. It is intended only for mature audiences. Listener discretion advised. Welcome back, my brothers and sisters of Warcraft, to episode 14 of Unshackled Fury. I am your host, Berserker, and holy shit, I don't believe it with my own two eyes, but I can see it right in front of me. Patch 7.0. The Legion pre-expansion patch is finally at long last upon us, and we are now jumping into the abyss that is Legion with all of the changes that are to come. And this week, I'll be talking a little bit about that because, God knows we haven't talked about it enough already. But it's coming. It's on our way. And on top of that, we have some other little bits of fun news that I thought it'd be good to get out there and make sure all of you are getting your eyes on, as well as another trip inside the helm this week. But first, as always, there's something picking at my brain, so let's jump in and rage. Let's rage. Now, originally when I had planned out this episode, I was slated to have in this segment my thoughts on the Demon Bounty fiasco that we had a couple of weeks ago, where Blizzard had teamed up with some of the streamers to give out beta opportunities, and the community kind of went apeshit. So I was going to talk about that. But there's been something else that has just been gnawing at me. It has to do with, and I apologize for everybody who's not a warrior, but it has to do with the warrior class hall. Now, I want to start with a question. Have you ever heard of the show Let's Make a Deal? This was a game show that was originally hosted by Monty Hall. It is now hosted by Wayne Brady. And sort of the premise is that people dress up in goofy costumes and shit, and then they get picked to go on stage, and they'll do a series of, well, do you want what's behind door number 1? Do you want what's in my pocket? Do you want what's in this box? All sorts of little tricks and things. People would get, let's say $1,000, and they'd be pretty happy about it. Until they said, well, let's find out what's behind door number 2, and it's like a box full of cash, And sometimes it's one of those deals in life where sometimes you don't want to know what the other option was, and this is kind of what we have here. Now, for Warriors, for the class hall, we get to go to the Halls of Valor, where you hang out with Odin, and you hang out with the Vrykul, and as far as the sort of Viking lore fantasy thing goes, I was on board with it day one. This is right up my alley. As somebody who listens to a lot of you could call it Viking metal. It's kind of what it is. That sort of thing. I was digging it. I loved it. But out of the corner of my eye, I would see these sort of complaints about how there really wasn't enough actual warrior class fantasy. And I didn't quite understand it at first. I thought, well, Vikings, Vykrul, badassery. This is up our alley. This is, this is us. And as time went on, I kept hearing these sorts of complaints. And then eventually, we had the Artifact Class Hall Q&A with Lore and Craig Amai. And somebody essentially asked the question, what happened or where were the famous warrior NPCs in our class hall? And at this point, Craig and I started to tell this story about how originally they had this, what they called the Hall of Heroes, where major warrior hero ghosts would be around and would interact with you, and that was sort of the awesome class fantasy that they had going. But then they decided that for some reason they couldn't make it work. And so they scrapped it and instead went with the Vrykul scene, which they felt was more neutral to the class fantasy. I really wish you hadn't shown me what was behind door number 2, fellas, because that shit just really pisses me off, knowing that we could have had the Hall of Heroes filled with famous NPCs that I love and I miss. You just had a movie come out. You could have had Lothar. We could have been hanging out with Lothar, but instead, no. We're going to come up with a bunch of fucking nobodies and build up their story, and I don't even know who it is. And I may be speaking out of turn here. I completely admit this, but you have got to be kidding me. There are established lore characters that we're getting fucked out of because you can't figure out a way to make that story work? Oh, come on. You have an alternate timeline that you brought back Draenor, the warlords of Draenor, Gul'dan, and all these other guys, and you can't find a way to make a bunch of dudes get along in the afterlife. I love you, Blizzard. I love you guys. You guys do a lot of good stuff for me and a lot of good stuff for the other players in terms of the gameplay that you provide, and I do love Warcraft, man. But this is one of those times when you really shouldn't have peeled back that curtain, because now I'm always going to pine for that thing that I could not have. And maybe that's just one of my failings as a human being. But next time, don't tell me about what you didn't do unless you say it completely sucked. Don't tell me that it's awesome, but you just couldn't make it work. Just tell me it sucked. Never bring it up again, and make sure that whatever we got, we think was the greatest thing since sliced bread. And now it's time for News and the Blues. All right, so like I said at the top of the show, this is the week for the Legion pre-expansion patch, or what it really should be called. Hooray for extra bag space, because that's what we're all getting. I don't care about new spells. I don't care about new effects. I don't care about new rotations. None of that shit. I'm just glad that for the first time since I can remember, way back in the hallowed days of BC, I will actually have some fucking bag space. And void storage, I don't even know what's going to happen there anymore. I've been trying to figure this out for a while, but not only are you going to get bag space from what I can tell, since your appearances will be logged into essentially the wardrobe UI, they're not being absorbed. So all of that gear that you still have, you can sell it off. And if you're a cheapskate like me and you don't play the auction house game, it's a great way to make more money. And, I could use a couple extra thousand. I don't know about you. So that, to me, is the singular biggest thing, even though it's not really a gameplay mechanic. I think it's great. Having played Diablo 3, which is where a lot of the elements of this wardrobe come from, this is what you're looking at. Is if you haven't seen it, if you haven't looked at anything yet, essentially all of the, or at least a significant number of the appearances that you have either accrued through questing, things that you have in your bags from raids, all that kind of gear that you've been holding on to or have acquired in the past, they are going to be uploaded or tracked somehow, however they do it. I don't know. I'm not a tech guy. However they track these things, they will be put into your character's UI. And all of the helms, all of the shoulders, which you can now hide, by the way, which I don't know why you ever would, but the transmog availability to you will be unlike any you've ever seen. And I've been looking forward to this for a long time. Glad to finally see it come through. Not only on top of the gear, but there's also going to be enchants that will be stored there. So if you have enchants that you've used, it doesn't look like it's all of the ones that you've had in the past. Same with the gear. It's not everything you've ever had, but it should be a fairly good indicator. So you may have to go back and do some farming for enchants and for certain pieces of gear that you really like. But given that we're generally overpowered for anything you could want, except for, well, what we're working on right now or what we've been working on in Warlords, you should be good to go. Next to that, you do have, of course, the rest of the changes being made to your classes. Of course, I've said it before, but I'll say it again. There are so many changes. They are simply too numerous to even begin to name in a show like this. But I highly, highly encourage you to seek out whatever blogs you can, whatever posts you can. Wowhead is starting to put up guides again. If you have a class Discord you might be aware of, it's a little hit and miss. I think some communities are a little bit more put together than others, but a great resource to find material there if you can. But do whatever you must in order to figure out what your favorite class and spec may be up to. Maybe you want to change mains for Legion. Maybe you want to try a couple of things out. This is the time to figure that out, because for the first couple of weeks, so for the next couple of weeks, I should say, that is the general bulk of what we are getting. There's not going to be a lot of new content at this point, because what they're going to do is allow us time to get used to the new classes as they were. However, once we start getting into August, that's when things are going to ramp up. The first thing that we'll see are the demon invasions. There will be 6 locations across the map where these invasions are going to occur. And there are some related achievements. There's an achievement for, I guess, defending Azeroth against one of these invasions. There is another achievement for all 6 if you are successful. And of course, listen, you gotta bait us with whatever you can to get us to participate in these activities if new content simply isn't enough, which, God damn, it's been a year, it should be. But hey, I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth. So what else do we get? Well, there's going to be some other fantastic loot. There will be a variety of cloth, leather, mail, and plate items that we can loot for transmog. There are also going to be 16 what they're calling event-only weapons that you'll be able to obtain through various boss kills related to the invasions. And they will only be for a limited time, only during the Legion invasion. So again, they're really harping on activity during this time if you want these things. I believe there's also a, what are they calling it? A Fell Bat Pup Battle Pet. So if you're a pet collector, there's something in there for you as well. And so along with the demon invasions, they will also eventually roll out the demon hunters, so we can start seeing their story play out. If you pre-ordered, you can get access to that. If you're an idiot like me who bought the hard copy collector's edition, you're just going to have to wait to get your hands on one. But if you did get the pre-order advanced goodies, then you'll get access probably a couple of weeks before Legion launches. And then, of course, probably right up against, a week or 10 days before the launch, it looks like we will finally get the Broken Shore scenario, which, well, if you haven't played it through beta, if you've managed to avoid spoilers so far, I congratulate you. But that is when things are going to go down. That's when, frankly, a lot of really crazy shit is going to happen. And this game of ours, the lore, the storyline, a lot of it's going to change. And it's something that even if you miss everything else, if you haven't re-upped, if you haven't subbed in a while, that's the thing that you're definitely not going to want to miss. You have to make sure that you see that scenario, because if you don't at least read up on it, you're going to be lost, because there's there's a lot of stuff changing. And it is, frankly, the launching point for Legion. There is a cinematic that's associated with the end of it, which nobody has seen yet, but I can't imagine it's anything less than epic given the results that come after it. So keep your eyes open, but this is the month. So if you haven't subbed, resub, welcome back. If you've been hanging out waiting, it's time to jump in, boys and girls. It's time to get back into action. Let's kiss our garrisons goodbye, dump all those resources, say farewell to our followers. Let's jump back into some raids, check out our rotation, see what's going on, and get back into the world that we love. So as I mentioned in the raids portion of the show, we did have an artifact and class hall Q&A. Amongst the other things that they did talk about that I wanted to mention is that the artifact appearances are not exactly as straightforward as the UI would seem to indicate, as apparently there are some hidden appearances for these suckers. And I know for myself, when there are all of these previews, I like to go and check out, what are the different raid weapons I think are pretty cool? What are the mounts I want to shoot after? If there is some sort of cool pet for whatever stupid-ass reason I chase after this stuff, that's what I'll try to do right before the expansion hits, is I'll try to figure out which one of these items I want to go after. And the fact that some of these artifact appearances are not yet quite known is driving me crazy, because there are some really cool ones out there, particularly for my class. I'm sure that this stuff will get data mined. I have all the confidence in the world that before too long, all of this stuff is going to get known. But if you're like me, now's a good time to plan. Sort of pick out your strategy for obtaining these things, because it looks like it's going to be from a variety of sources. You can get artifact appearances from raids, you can get them from PvP, it looks like you can get them from a lot of the world content, which it looks like there is going to be more world content in Legion than ever before, which is fantastic. So take the time, take a look, and if I pick up on anything in particular, I certainly will talk about it on here. And now that, well, frankly, this will be the first time after this week that I'll be able to do a show with new content. So I'm not quite sure how I'm going to handle that yet for this show, but my guess is that as I play through things, as I pick up on things, that's where I'll go, but we'll see. On top of that, one of the things that they wanted to make clear is that the class halls are not meant to be the primary hubs for us as players, and that they really want to go back to Dalaran being the primary player hub. And I found this to be a little bit surprising, simply because the class halls have really been the thing that they have pumped up so much. This is something going back even to BlizzCon they talked a lot about. They have really hyped these things up quite a bit. So it was a surprise to me to find out that Dalaran is really what they're pinning their hopes on in terms of that being the place where players congregate. You can put portals there, you can put vendors there. I mean, there are things that you can do to steer players towards a certain location. So it could be Dalaran, and frankly, Dalaran really was a superior place to hang out during the days of Wrath of the Lich King. Shattrath it wasn't terrible. It wasn't bad in any way. But Dalaran just sort of had this majestic way about it. It was a fun place. It was vibrant. It was lively. They had funny NPCs walking around. They had one little guy who would zap people with a wand and I think turn him into a sheep or something. The locations were pretty convenient. You sort of had, you had a horde side, you had an alliance side, you had a couple different banks, and it's just the construction, the layout, it was this cool, vibrant city. I'm glad to see that they brought it back. It spoiler alert, it kind of gets fucked up a little bit, but Legion Invasions have a way of doing that, I think, to just about any place. So it was, in a way, it was interesting to hear that. I was surprised, but I think that as long as they have figured out the resource management issue that we had back in Wrath, where Dalaran was just an absolute resource hog, that you had a lot of frame rate problems, there was a lot of information just glitching out. That's why Crystal Song Forest is completely empty. When you go there now, you go up to Northrend, and there's just nothing below Dalaran. That's why. Originally, they had planned, I believe, to have some sort of, like all the stuff they had up north with the tournament and all that, I think a lot of that was originally meant to happen in Crystal Song Forest. But because Dalaran sucked up so much of everyone's computer resources, they couldn't do it. So as long as they've got that figured out, or maybe they've just jacked up the system requirements and I haven't noticed, then it will be a great place to be. And I'm looking forward to sitting in my favorite bar there in Dalaran and just piss away all kinds of hours while I'm waiting for a raid to start, or I'm going through inventory or whatever it is. So welcome back, Dalaran. You were missed. One last thing that I got out of some of these Q&As, a couple of them really, was that the Blizzard developers seem to be very focused on keeping the possibility of adding extra content throughout the life cycle of Legion as a possibility. This seems to be the biggest lesson that they have learned coming out of Warlords of Draenor, is that when you have static content, when you have just a patch that comes in, there's that set of information, those new quests, the new raid, whatever it is, and then that's it. That content gets used up pretty quickly, and all of the development that's gone into a particular area or particular ideas or whatever it is essentially go to waste after that. Several times the devs have talked about how the technology that they've been working on, especially with the world content, is being built in a way that they can continue to add content throughout the expansion. This is something that I think most of us have called for, is more regular content. Here we are going on past a year since the last major content patch. And every time now, fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice, go fuck yourself, whatever that saying is. This is one of those things where I hope they have it right. Every expansion, we get the speech about, yeah, we know we screwed up with the release cycles and it was too far and it was too long. And I'm sure that they've seen their subscription rates just plummet because of stuff like this. If they have finally figured it out, if they have figured out a way not only just to pace the content rollout, but in a way to continue to build on top of the existing content and continue to grow and explore the worlds that they've built, I'm going to go ahead and say it. I think that this is the kind of thing that could lead to a resurgence in interest in this game. There's always going to be people that play this game. Now, whether it's 5 million, 15 million, 500, whatever it is, the Warcraft servers are probably going to be on for God only knows how long. It could be one running in the Smithsonian one day. But this is the kind of thing that Blizzard needs to do in order to keep people interested in Warcraft on a longer-term basis. And if they can find ways to continue to grow and build and incorporate things into the existing story that they want to tell and keep us interested in players, this really could be a renaissance for Warcraft. And I pray to whatever gods there may be that this does come to pass. In a more recent piece of news, we were made aware of a new silence penalty that Blizzard is going to be employing in Legion. And what this looks to do is, again, try to clamp down on abusive player behavior that, as much as we try as a community to police ourselves, as much as Blizzard tries to clamp down on this sort of behavior, there is still more room to grow. And so what they announced is that once a player has been reported for abusive behavior, whether it's through tells or whether it's through various messages in certain channels, they're going to do investigations of these complaints. And in the event these investigations reveal a valid complaint, a variety of restrictions are going to be placed on the violating player's account. And I have to say, the terms of this silence penalty are pretty good in the sense that if you are found to be in violation following one of these investigations, there will be an account-wide silence penalty placed upon you. And essentially, you will only be limited to talking to your friends. You will be able to respond to tells or whispers to you. And that's pretty much it. You won't be able to talk in any of the global channels. You won't be able to whisper anyone. And for the first violation, it will be for 24 hours, and it will double each time you are found to be in violation. So going from 1 day to 2 days, 4 days, you do the math. So eventually, if you are one of these very naughty individuals, you could be finding yourself under a silence period for quite a long time. And this is something that, quite frankly, Blizzard has needed to do. They are continually under fire for not addressing the complaints that players have about abusive behavior. And it's clear that this is something that they've worked on for a while. This is a fairly well thought out process that they have. I encourage you to go read the post if you haven't. There is a blue post up about it, explaining it into more detail than I have. But hopefully this helps to curtail some of this behavior, because after all, we are here to play a game and have fun. And the last thing you need is someone jumping on your screen and going crazy. So hopefully that helps, and I guess we will see. And lastly, as we are getting into the final month of the ramp up before Legion, we are seeing some pretty cool stuff coming out in terms of other media. We have seen the Harbingers teaser pop up. This is the sort of Lords of War-esque cinematic series that they're doing for Legion, and same kind of style. It looks amazing. Obviously, they're telling the story of Illidan, his Illidari. There's going to be stuff about Medivh, how Gul'dan became, essentially, it looks like who he was. It looks pretty cool. Along with that, there's also been several comics that they have released surrounding the story of Legion. If you have the ability, you have to watch the motion version of these things with the music and the whole thing. It's a pretty immersive experience, and I think it's a great way for them to catch people up to the story. There was a fantastic one about Magni Bronzebeard, who, since Cataclysm, has been essentially this big diamond locked down in the old Ironforge area. Well, he's back, and I'm not going to tell you how or why or when. Go read it. See for yourself. It's a pretty cool story. Glad to see him back. They, I think, kind of accidentally leaked this at BlizzCon last year, but it was good to see him back in action. I missed that character. He was a pretty cool dude. And, he's the king of the dwarves. Can't go wrong there. But if you get a chance, check it out. There's also one that they just released this past week that has to do with the High Mountain Tauren. Pretty cool stuff. So check that out. And last but not least, I love the Chronicle Volume 1. Well, they've just announced that there is going to be a Chronicle Volume 2 Pre-orders are open now, and the tentative release date is right around the corner of March 14th of 2017. It's going to be a little ways off, but if you heard my review of this, you already know how I feel about it. If not, this is one of the finest publications that Blizzard has put out in connection with Warcraft. It is an all-encompassing, beautifully illustrated book about the lore of the game. It dives into some areas that we had no knowledge about before, helps to flesh out a lot of the holes in some of the backstory that they have, and clearly it's something that they're using going forward. So if you haven't checked out Chronicle Volume 1, I highly encourage you to do it. If you have, like me, buckle up for Chronicle Volume 2, and let's get to it. So that's it for the news for now. You guys know what to do. Get out there, check your blogs, check your papers, check whatever you got to check to get yourself in gear for Legion. So now, let's take a scary little trip back under the helm. One of my very first episodes of this show, I wanted to try to do something a little bit different. So I did this segment called Under the Helm, where instead of just doing the usual news or some other type of item, I wanted to take an opportunity to kind of talk about some of the things that I think about as a player, just as a person that's here in the world with the rest of you. Something came to mind recently, and it began when I read this book that was advertised. I saw the article on Kotaku, and it was a book called World of Warcraft, under the banner of Boss Fight Books. It was written by Daniel Lisi, if I'm saying that name correctly. It chronicled the times of this individual in the World of Warcraft. This goes back to vanilla, and it looks like he lasted a couple of expansions. In a lot of the book, what I was hoping was, it was kind of pitched as this story about time in Warcraft and the origins of Warcraft and a little bit more information about the game. And really what it came off to me is one sort of illustration of the pitfalls of self-publishing, which if you're going to publish anything, you better make sure you get your facts right. So saying that, we went to certain size of raids or when certain things were happening, probably want to double check that. But the thing that really struck me about this book was how negative it was. This was well after this player had quit. Hadn't played Warcraft in years, hadn't been near the game, hadn't seen the game. Why this particular time they chose to write about it, I don't know. But it started to make me think, beyond the negativity about this particular story, it started to make me think about my own end. And when will my Warcraft death, so to speak, end up coming? At some point, inevitably, we'll all hang up this game. Now, I think that they'll have these servers running until the, heat death of the universe, practically. But there will come a time when we put this game down. And as I was contemplating this, as I kind of had this rolling around, I came across this other blog. It was called 8 Years in Azeroth. Now, if you haven't seen this, I really recommend that you seek this out. And what it is a very long blog. It's hundreds of posts detailing this raid leader, this guild leader's time from vanilla up through Pandaria. These were all very well thought out posts that talked about the players and the challenges and what each tier was like, what each change brought them in terms of stresses or triumphs or whatever have you. But again, this came after this player had quit playing. In fact, the articles were put out, or the blog posts were put out, years after they had actually happened. I think that this blog started in 2014, and it was detailing incidences from 10 years before, so it was well after the fact. And again, it really made me think about where this journey is going. And on top of that, even one more thing, was watching the end of the game PlanetSide. Now, this was not a game that I knew very well. I mean, I knew of it. This was a game that came out in 2003, so it shares essentially the longevity of Warcraft. And it was foretold that there would be an end date and a time for this particular game, and so there were many people who loaded up, got in the game, and they recorded the events. So essentially this meteor shower coming and destroying this planet. But it really made me think again just about the time that I've spent in this game, the people that I've met, the challenges, the highs, the lows, the accomplishments that we've had in game, if just only in pixelated form, if just challenges and achievements that really don't mean anything outside of the game. They mean something to us because we did them when we were here in game. It was what was important to us, and still is in many respects. And it made me think about my own journey through this game, and how when I first started, it was just kind of on a lark. This was something that I did really because of South Park. I took it up, did the trial, and before long I was lost in this world. I brought my friends in, one of them today, who part of the leadership on my raid team. We still play here 9.5 years later, we're still together. But so many times I have almost given up this game. And we all have these stories where there were those raid nights that we just couldn't make it through, or there were people that we were on a raid team with or in a guild with that were just insufferable and driving us to madness. For myself, a lot of this came during the era of Wrath and subsequently in Cataclysm, where finding a raiding guild was very difficult. And you had to apply. I mean, it still kind of goes on, right? But I remember applying to guilds, and then you'd raid some weeks, and then the comp wasn't good, and then you'd sit the bench, and the only way to do any of this endgame content was if you were in a raiding guild, and this was before, LFR or any of that stuff. So for the people that don't like LFR, I can say, without LFR, there are so many people that would never experience the end game of Warcraft, which is essentially what a lot of it has become. They've tried over the years to cater to all kinds of different players, and I think they do a better job of it now than they used to. But endgame is certainly where it's at. I can remember so many nights just throwing my headset on the ground and being frustrated at the fact that either a team was breaking up again or a guild was falling apart. And there were so many nights that I almost called it quits. And the very last time that happened was right before I found the team that I'm on right now. I had come back after my son had been born and tried to regain some sort of foothold on a stable raiding team. And it just wasn't happening, and I had come to that decision where I thought I was done. I was going to hang it up. Lo and behold, my friend, who I still raid with to this day, had found a guild. I searched through this guild, and I found a team that met perfectly with our requirements for raiding at the time, where we both had small children. But it was a way for us to keep going. And now 3 years later, I lead that team. I'm proud of that team. I'm thrilled to still be here and to still be around. But even amongst all of that, I still recognize that someday that this journey will end. And for some people I see as we've gone through this beta process, they probably should have cut the cord a long time ago. And in a much larger sense, I think that we as humanity have a very hard time dealing with toxic relationships. I think some people are very good at knowing when something has gone bad and they'll cut it off immediately. But other people will stay, and they'll stay in these abusive relationships where either they're being abusive or the other way around, and nobody can call it off. And you see a lot of that in Warcraft these days, where people jump on forums and they say really horrible shit, or they'll say insane things to each other, which is part of the reason we have a silence penalty coming. And those are the types of people, when you see them around, those are the types of people that really need to walk away. And if you yourself find these thoughts entering your mind, then I will tell you, it is time to walk away. And for myself, I try to stay vigilant about that, and I look around and I say, how do I feel about these changes? Am I becoming too toxic? Yes, I get outspoken. I'm a very outspoken person. I rail against certain things, but never mistake that for my love of this game and the support that I have for the people that create it, for those of us that play it. So even when I look down the road and I wonder, when does my WoW death come? It won't be this day, and it won't be for quite some time. Because let me tell you, going into Legion, I am more pumped up, I am more excited, and I am frankly more connected to this community than I have ever been in the almost 10 years that I have been playing this game. And so, like so many of my friends, like so many people I play with, like so many people that I see out there, this is a great time to be part of this game, this community. I am fired the fuck up. I am ready to go. So that death may come, but not today. So that does it for episode 14 of this crazy little show I like to call Unshackled Fury. Thank you very much for joining me once again. As always, you can reach me on Twitter at Berserker Rage. You can find this show on SoundCloud, iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play. You can also, for whatever reason you may want to, email me at unshackledfury@gmail.com. So until next time, my friends, get out there, enjoy that Legion pre-patch, let's kick some ass in some demon invasions, and I will see you on the other side. Strength and honor to you all.